Hi, everyone, and welcome to the, you know what I'm going to call it? The Quantum Healing with Candace and Tena show today.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm here with Tena Dodds, who is an energy healer, an intuitive, and a beyond quantum healer. Welcome, Tena.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to get to know you a little bit and to introduce you to everyone else who watches this channel. You know, I've been watching how you have been taking to this work like a duck to water. Your enthusiasm, your excitement about some of the possibilities of this work, and the way that you communicate it has really touched me, and I've really noticed it. But you and I haven't at all talked really till this morning, have we?
No, we haven't. And thank you. Yeah, I'm really, really passionate about this work. I just cannot say enough about it. I love it so much. There's just so many possibilities. It's just so limitless and endless. As far as healing goes, it's just so all-encompassing. And that's what I love about it. And also what I love so much is that it's so much heart-based, right, and energy-based. And yeah, it's just so lovely. And I'm so grateful to you for creating such a wonderful modality to, because it really opens up the accessibility to people that wouldn't have had it otherwise across the globe. So that's really incredible. And especially right now, when we're locked down in our homes and you can't meet with a practitioner in an office, that we have the accessibility to online sessions is really amazing. And it kind of like came just in time for this.
I keep thinking about timing of all kinds of things because, one of the things we're going to do is get to know each other a little bit. And I have committed it to memory now, Tena. You are in New Jersey. And, I used to live in New Jersey for a little while. So you're in a place called Clayton, but I don't know exactly where that is. Where is that?
It's South Jersey. So it's a tiny little town. Probably nobody's ever heard of it. But it's in South Jersey. It's about 30 minutes from Philadelphia, and kind of like down in the southern part towards the shore.
That's a really nice place. So I actually lived in Bud Lake for a little while, and then I lived in Edison, which was kind of crazy. And but I wasn't there for very long. I was there in the early 90s. But now you and I both are able to do this kind of work online. So it doesn't really matter where we are as long as we've got internet connection or a telephone. But, talking about what's going on in the planet right now, we are recording this on the 27th of May, but we'll be posting this very quickly. Life is a little different for you, I think, in New Jersey than it is for me here in rural Kansas. What's day-to-day things like there right now? I mean, we won't talk too much about, all of that. I want to talk about your journey and healing and sessions and everything, but we have to talk about where we are right now and getting out and connecting with people. And we're connecting with people like this, but what's it like in Jersey right now?
Well, in South Jersey, it's not as intense as it is up north, because up north towards New York, they're having a lot of really intense issues up there. But down south, it's not as, the feeling isn't as intense, although there is a lot of fear. It's just strange being out and about. You're not allowed into a store without a mask on. You're not allowed to drive on the road after 8 p.m. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And pretty much everything is shut down except for the supermarket, the liquor store, and that's it. The supermarket and the liquor store open, and everything else is shut down. And Yeah, everything. The schools are all shut down, and they're not going back this year. They're actually ending the year early, and I don't know if they're going back next year or not. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's a lot of fear in the community. I can feel it, but the great thing about my little community is I do see people like outside, taking walks, playing with their children, walking their dogs, stuff like that. And I was actually surprised talking to a few friends this weekend who were, we were discussing the whole issue, and they were kind of on board with thinking too, like how strictly they've put in these control issues. And we were looking at the restrictions for the beach. They opened up the beaches this last weekend, and you're allowed to surf, but not swim.
Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. Wow. How does one, oh my goodness. Okay. Wow. That is, obviously I have nothing intelligent to say after hearing that. So, okay. So I have to compare and contrast, where you are and where I am. Now, I actually lived in Pennsylvania too. And I actually lived in New York too. So I lived near Syracuse, and I lived in a suburb of Philly. So I have been up and down.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
That's wonderful that we have that.
I grew up outside of Philly in a suburb.
Well, which one?
In Delaware County, like Ridley Park area.
I know exactly where that is. We were in, oh my God, am I losing it? I'm thinking of New York, though. We were in Baldwinsville, New York, and we were in Downingtown. I don't know why I couldn't say it. Downingtown, Pennsylvania. And so I understand the East Coast vibe. I mean, I get it. And I spent time in the cities and everything. I have to tell you, as much as I enjoy visiting all of that, the big cities, the bustling, the big cultural centers, my heart really is here. And it's here for exactly, I think, what we're experiencing right now, which is, as you're telling me what is open and available for you right now, it's completely opposite where I am here. I mean, even restaurants are open now. I don't feel like I'm really restricted for doing anything. I haven't put a mask on one time. The only thing that I have done so far is once on my way in to pick up some Chipotle lunch for the family, I was starting to go in, and the gal there was kind of monitoring how many people were coming in the door. That's the only thing and then once we were in, nobody was doing any of that in the
oh, wow.
line. And I only saw a couple people with masks, and I've gotten the looks sometimes from other people with masks. So I'm understanding the dynamic there, but I haven't had to do it yet myself. I also really could use these glasses being, repaired and adjusted, but I think they've got a mask thing going on there, and I'm going to try my best to get on the other side of this without ever having to put one on. I know I'll be lucky, and it'll be unusual, but my life's a little different than yours right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's someone standing outside of the grocery store, counting the people going in, wiping down the shopping carts, making sure you're wearing a mask. I know even in Canada for Karen, they're standing there asking them if they have symptoms and checking their temperatures.
Before going into a grocery store, they're checking their temperatures. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so this may be a highly personal thing to say, but I think God really loves me for helping make sure that I am here right now, because I wouldn't handle that very well, I don't think. And yet, what are you going to do? Not buy food for your family? So, I mean, I understand. I really understand.
Yeah, and they're not even allowed to take their kids in this store. That's really frowned upon.
Well, my daughter's in San Diego, and she's got 3 small kids, and she's in the same boat. with the kid thing and the California severe restrictions. So
Oh, yeah.
truly understand that. Well, let's switch to this idea, because I think you are on the same page I am. Despite all of what we're going through right now, I still have this feeling deep, deep within inside of me that we are going to have a brilliant outcome of this, just brilliant. Now, I don't know that any of us know when that brilliant outcome is at all. Is that soon? Is that this year, next year, the next few years, or is it for my children rather than me? I don't know. I really don't know.
Right.
But I am buzzing like crazy right now, just saying that, because I know it's true. And you feel the same way, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, ever since this started, I felt like it was the beginning of the end of the old world. And I feel like it's going to require all of that to fall away, to really crumble, before we can start rebuilding in the new way, you know, in the way we've always wanted things to be. I feel like that's kind of happening simultaneously too, where things are falling and being restructured. But like you, I have that, just that knowing and trust that we will be, you know, in the new earth someday. We just don't know when, right?
Right.
And when Dolores came through in the beginning of the year in a session and we asked about 2020, she said, this is a year of transition and it's going to be chaotic and you're going to see things that, you know, you probably never thought you would see. And that may bring up fear and sadness and all of these feelings. But just to keep coming back to your own self and your own heart space and feeling from within and coming back to your own truth, because there's so much out there, right? I mean, so much information. But yeah, I really do, like you said, we don't know when, but I really think it's going to be beautiful when it's over.
I still typically have clients who come to me for sessions that are so completely personally focused. It's not every session that I get that the cosmic pulse or even the world pulse is touched upon or described. But in the cases where they do, it's always positive, and it's very much like what you just said. And in my own conversations with Dolores, she makes it very, very clear that nobody's going to clean up our mess for us but us. There's no swooping in of some sort of savior. This is all up to us. This is why we're here. And my favorite thing that she has said about that is, we can't clean up the mess unless we look at it.
Right. Yes.
And
yes.
She makes things very, very easy to understand when she comes through and communicates, doesn't she? And you were saying that you felt her even come in right before we were talking today.
Oh my God, yes, I had this intense rush of energy. My heart was beating out of my chest and there was a cardinal singing so loud right outside of my window. And it was almost making me cry. I knew it was her. And I had to sit here for a minute and breathe through it because I literally like couldn't even breathe. Yeah, she's definitely here with us. And one of the things I love that she said in another session was that creation is born out of destruction. And we are seeing the destructive energies right now. And then we will create out of that, you know, out of that destruction.
Right. I'm getting this real mental image of somebody like trying to fix a house with Band-Aids, right? Putting Band-Aids on the wall. And in a way, that's what we've been doing for so long. We've been just putting more and more and more Band-Aids on top of something that really needs to just You know, it's time to just do a complete build up from the beginning. And Tena, you know what I have noticed? I was telling this to a client just this last week who we did talk about some of this, which is starting in about, well, it was before 2012. So starting in my sessions, maybe around 2010, I found that people started to come to me and they started to talk about this idea of wanting to build a healing center. And it was more and more people. And then we would go to the classes or we would go to the reunions. You know, our support forum sponsored those reunions when Dolores was alive. And we would get together and we would talk about that, you know, sessions. I mean, it's one of the reasons you get together. And more and more people were coming, and it was exciting. But this is what I noticed then after that and up until today. So people are still coming, more and more people coming, more and more people talking about this thing about healing centers. Some of these people actually even, I think I'm really supposed to build one of these, and they sold their homes and they created a center. And several of those people who've now done that have, you know, managed to make a go of it. But there have been others who it didn't work out. And it didn't work out because there wasn't enough participation to keep it running, because we're still operating in this 3D world. And so I started asking about it in other sessions about, look, all these people are coming and talking about it. And this was another time that Dolores came through. And what Dolores said was, what's really happening here, see, is that the human beings as a collective, we're all feeling the want and the need for this. We are all tapping into this idea, this concept. We are bringing it into the collective consciousness, again, I'm buzzing, to create, because we want them so much, but because we're still as humans figuring this kind of stuff out and figuring out how communication and energy communication on these levels works. Some of the people who feel that energy so passionately actually translate that energy to, this is what you're supposed to do. And it may not be that specific. It may be more of, this is where you're headed. This is where you really want to go. This is what you can participate in. This is what you can support. You might even work there or whatever, but we still see each other as being so separate, you know, that I am going to create my healing center, right? And it's really bigger than that. It's the idea. We're creating the idea of it first so that when we create it, it can thrive. What do you think of that idea?
I think you're spot on. And I was actually reading Convoluted Universe last night, one of Dolores's books, and the beings were talking about, you know, outside influences from spirit beings, ETs, implanting those ideas into the humans.
Yeah.
So that it would kind of take hold. And that's one of the ways that they help us, by implanting these big ideas, you know, for healing centers and things like that. And, you know, it's not going to take hold in everyone. Not everyone's going to have their healing center, but the idea is there and it takes hold in the collective consciousness. But I can imagine that we aren't there yet, but we are on the precipice of needing those kinds of things. You know, I feel that as more and more people are waking up, and I've seen it since this has started happening, so many people are waking up, which is really, it brings me so much hope. I know we still have a really long way to go, but it is happening. So, you know, I think we'll need those healing centers with all these different people at all these different stages of awakening, you know, and the people like us who have kind of been there and seen it and integrated all of the information before them will be able to help, like, bring them forward with us.
You know, that's a really, really great point about talking about all the different stages of awakening. And you know, we as BQH practitioners, we get all of these different kinds of people who show up, and some people, they're wet behind the ear kind of babies. They just are now starting to see some of this stuff, and others who've been at it for years and years and years, sometimes even longer than I've been practicing, which is, 12 years now, this particular kind of work. But we're all in different stages, and we're all going to need different kinds of communication. And what's really fascinating to me, and I know I talked with a couple of the speakers about this during Worldwide Regression Week, which, by the way, thank you so much that you are a part of this year with our community. The speed of which awakening is, some of these people who are waking up during this kind of thing that's going on in our world, that's like being woken up like with a really loud fire alarm, rather than maybe the other kinds of awakening that some of us have gotten, which may have come in jolts. For me, it started with my brother's death, which of course was, unexpected in my case, and quite a shock. But other things along the way have built up to my more full awakening. And some people are getting this all at once, and they need some extra care. What do you have to say about your noticing of that issue?
I think sometimes that's what humans need. Otherwise, they won't wake up. That was true for me. I had to hit rock bottom and be in like the deepest part of my suffering before I woke up. But part of that reason why I didn't wake up sooner is because the information's just not there. I mean, when I found the book, The Secret, I was like, how did I never know about this? Like 30 some years on the planet, and I'm just finding out about the law of attraction. Why isn't this taught in schools? Why don't we know these things, And you just want to scream it from the rooftops because you're so excited about these things that you're learning.
Well, that's a perfect segue into letting you or inviting you to share your story. I know a little bit about it, but why don't you tell our viewers? Probably encompasses some of that rock bottom, right?
Yeah. Okay, let me have a sip of water.
She's getting ready to tell the tale. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many different ways you can tell your story, right? So in my early 20s, I started to get symptoms of autoimmune type illness, chronic pain, fatigue, things like that. But looking back on my childhood, I realized that I was never fully healthy. I didn't have the energy that other kids had. I needed more sleep. I was more fatigued. And then at 13, when puberty hit and I got my period, they were extremely painful and heavy, and would like bring me to my knees kind of pain. And I would have to leave school, and it was just really, really bad. And, no one ever took me to the doctor because I guess it's that old way of thinking, like, this is just normal, right? Women are supposed to be in pain. But it wasn't anywhere near normal. And then in my early 20s, I finally took myself to the doctor and found out I had stage 4 endometriosis. And the doctor said, oh, well, first they thought I had cancer. So they sent me to an oncologist. And he's like, I can't do anything for you unless you want me to take everything out. And I'm like, okay, well, where can I go? So he sends me to a specialist in endometriosis, which I had never even heard of before, which is another thing in women's care. We don't hear about these things. They're not well known. They're so underdiagnosed, and many women suffer from endometriosis and don't even know it, because the only way they can diagnose it is through surgery. So he said he would go in with a laparoscope and do some excision, because what endometriosis is, it's like the uterine tissue starts to grow outside and in the pelvic cavity. And so when he did the laparoscope, he said he closed me right back up because it was so bad. He couldn't do anything. He had to open me up. So he opened me up in another surgery and like excised it all. But it was so bad, like my ovaries were wrapped around and stuck to the back of my bladder. It was stuck to the bowel. There was like risk for bowel perforation. It was just in everything, all of this tissue. And that's what was causing the severe pain. And he excised about 60% of it, he said. And then I went on this hormone to stop me from ovulating for the next 3 months so that it could heal. But the hormone, I think, did more harm than good, because after I came off of that, I started having all of these weird symptoms. Like I said, autoimmune symptoms, pain, fatigue, migraines, eyeball pain, like my eyeballs would hurt. It was the weirdest thing. Just pain throughout my entire body. And it's this kind of pain that you can't explain to anyone, because it's not muscle pain. It's not bone pain. It's not nerve pain. It's just this like widespread pain that I had a really difficult time explaining to doctors. And none of the doctors did any good for me anyway. But so, yeah, I started having these symptoms.
I recognize that very, very well. You and I have a lot in common there.
Yeah. So I went back to the surgeon and I told him what was going on. And the only thing he said to me is, well, are you ready to have a baby? And I was like, I don't know what's happening with my body right now. And no, I'm not ready to have a baby. Like, I don't want to bring a baby into this world and not know what's going to happen to me. What if I leave that baby to my boyfriend who has no idea how to take care of a baby? You know, what if something happens to me or the baby? And he was like, well, you're really selfish. Women with cancer and heart disease come to me to have babies. You're really selfish. And I was like, how does that make sense? How does that make any sense?
Wow.
So I left there and I was just traumatized from that visit. I have a lot of like stories like that, medical kind of trauma. And I went on and I went to other doctors and nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. Nobody could tell me. It was just, I was diagnosed with Lyme at one point, and the doctor was just like, oh, here's some antibiotics, you'll be fine. That was it. That was literally it. And the symptoms kind of never went away. They just got worse and worse and worse. And it was like 7 years before I got a diagnosis of lupus. But before that, I had been through a lot with my family. Both of my parents had died back to back, 2 months apart. My dad died on my mom's birthday. And then my mom died on my dad's birthday. And then my dad died 2 months later of heartbreak. Like, he was just completely shattered and heartbroken, but they both suffered for a really long time. So I was helping to take care of them while not even be able to take care of my own self and my 88-year-old grandfather with Alzheimer's. So all of this was happening at once, and I was just trying so hard to hold it all together, and I had very little help, no help. And yeah, so that was a really, like 2007 to 2010 was a really intense, really hard time with my grandfather and my mom and dad being really ill and then passing away. My mother-in-law died of stage 4 breast cancer right in that period where my mom and dad died as well. So it was traumatic, but there was this feeling of being relieved that they weren't suffering anymore and that I knew they were all in a better place. But that also is what got me started into looking into the afterlife. And, you know, I came across a couple of books by mediums about soul families and this and that. And I kind of like left it for the time being, but I was always really open-minded and into paranormal stuff. And Like I was always really drawn to that, but I couldn't find it really in my reality. Like it just wasn't something that presented. And so after my parents died, I moved to New Jersey and I finally got that diagnosis of lupus. And when you receive a diagnosis like that, it's kind of bittersweet because you finally have a name to put to all the symptoms that you're having. But it's also like they tell you it's a chronic lifelong illness and you're never going to be better and you have to depend on medications for the rest of your life. And this is it. This is how you're going to live. And it was difficult. It's difficult living with chronic illness and being in pain all the time and not being able to function. At that point, I wasn't working anymore. I had taken a leave from work. I was a nurse. I took a leave from work and I never went back because I couldn't work anymore. The pain and fatigue and the anxiety too, the anxiety had gotten really bad. So fast forwarding in 2014, that's when I had another level of awakening, like we were talking about. And that's when I really hit rock bottom. Like I was extremely depressed, agoraphobic, couldn't go out of the house, just like PTSD from all that I had been through. Plus, the physical, all the physical symptoms still that were worse. Plus I was addicted to all the drugs that they had handed out to me. I mean, the doctors never did anything for me besides hand out prescriptions. They never even offered therapy for my anxiety or depression or anything. They would just hand me drugs. And I grew up, in a family that's what they did too. They just followed what the doctor said. They took the prescriptions. And then I went into nursing and I was indoctrinated by the medical community to do the same things. So I didn't know anything else. So yeah, I was really at rock bottom. My husband and I were we were getting ready to lose our apartment because he had lost his job and I wasn't working. And then I had this huge awakening. Like I said, I found The Secret and I found, it was on YouTube. It was an Oprah show with Eckhart Tolle and they were doing the New Earth series. So I downloaded that PDF, A New Earth, and it literally changed my life. And I was like, wait, I don't have to be a victim anymore. Like I can change my own thoughts. I have control over this because no one teaches us that we have control over our own thoughts, that we don't have to believe everything we think, and that, we don't have to let these big emotions take us over, and that we're so much more than that. That's not who we are, right? Because we identify so strongly with the thoughts and the beliefs and the emotions that we have that we can't even see past any of that to see into our being and who we really are at the core. And it's making me cry. But having that realization, go ahead.
Oh no, so much of what you're saying, take a breath. So much of what you're saying resonates with me so much. I mean, even down to the number of years you suffered, I mean, I started having symptoms as a kid myself, and then spent a very painful 7-8 years until, I just, I had my rock bottom. Just closest they came for me was fibromyalgia, but it was a myriad of things and so much different kind of pain. And it just affected everything about me. I remember sitting in traffic and looking at people like who might be, because I was still in the East Coast when some of this was going on, the really, really bad parts. And I would look and I would think, I wonder if that person who's sitting in that car is in as much pain as I am. Does anybody on the planet know how much this hurts? And I used to drive on a road and I used to see like a semi truck coming this way. Now I was not suicidal. I wasn't, but I remember thinking, I wouldn't want to ruin his day, but it would be so easy to stop the pain. It would be so easy if I just went this way in front of that semi or this way off the bridge. I was a mother, a wife, a daughter. I wasn't going to do that to my family because I knew that would bother, more than bother. It would put a chink in everybody's life. It would mess up a lot of people, bring a lot more pain out there. And it was all about the pain that I was trying to. So I know what that hitting rock bottom is. And then when you get this, because fibro too, a bunch of shrugging of shoulders.
I have fibro too.
Yeah. Sorry, this is, there's, and a lot of it, they call that wastebasket diagnosis, but I understand it. But then when you are given hope by some sort of either person or running across information, I mean, even what I say to clients right now is, look, I've seen birth defects resolve themselves in these sessions. Do I guarantee it? No. But one of my biggest sessions ever was a woman who was born prematurely, whose lungs were never correct. They were scarred from being born a pound in the 1940s. I think it even was at the time, or maybe around that time. They didn't even expect this little being to live, and she ended up through a single session being able to breathe. If that's possible, you tell me what's not possible, right? I mean, so the possibility, at least that's possible. You have to start with the idea that what is your dream is at least possible. And I think, as you were telling your story, and it relates so much to mine, here's your pill, doctor knows best kind of upbringing. Nobody ever told us it was possible unless it was told in a fairy tale sort of way, or in a completely, you don't believe this ridiculous religious kind of thing of a miracle, do you? Or, I mean, it's been explained away. That hope was explained away with logic and science so completely that it changed our entire belief system. So it's amazing, isn't it, when something comes in and is able to shift such a set belief system, and you were able to do it. And how'd you come out on the other side of it then?
Absolutely. Yeah, just that shift in perception, it changed my whole outlook on life, my whole thought processes, everything. And it was a long road. Like, it was a lot of work shifting those thoughts, and putting in the effort every day to really remain present and not feed into those thoughts. It was a few years, but gradually the anxiety dissipated. Gradually the depression dissipated. And then I found medical medium, and I found him before I started it. I came across him before, and I wasn't ready. Like, everything I've been through has been in these, like, just divinely orchestrated steps. That if I would have started earlier or later, it wouldn't have worked, right? Waking up and learning that I'm guided all the time, and witnessing miracles on a daily basis with these amazing synchronicities. Like, I would find $5 on the street if I needed it. It was just these amazing series of synchronicities that would happen and happen and happen. We ended up not getting kicked out of our apartment. Actually, everything just turned. It happened at the same time as my awakening, when I started putting trust in the universe and found that peace within myself, the peace that passeth all understanding, they call it. Where, you find that peace within you when everything is crumbling around you. I found that within myself, and I was able to hold that and trust and know that I would be taken care of, and that no matter what happened, I would be okay. And so it was fine. Like, this woman, the manager of the apartment complex, offered me a job. She said we could stay in our apartment. We got this charity to pay the back rent. My husband got a job. We started on the same exact day. Like, it was incredible. And then we had needed a new car, and this long distance uncle of his passed away and left him like just enough money to buy a car. It was the craziest thing. He didn't even know who this person was. So yeah, these series of events that really proved to me that the universe was working for me and not against me. And even with the physical symptoms, having that mental clarity and having that hope, I was able to propel myself forward, you know, and I realized how guided I was and how supported and how loved I was. So finding the medical medium, I actually ended up leaving my husband, waking up. The waking up process can be really painful because sometimes you realize that the people and situations that you've been in aren't for your highest good. And I realized that that relationship was emotionally abusive on many levels. And, you know, that's another story. That's like a whole lifetime of that. And waking up to that and realizing that I've been giving my power away to people. You know, there's only so much you can blame them, and before you have to take responsibility for your part in it and say, yeah, you've done all these horrible things, but I've given you the power to do that, and I'm taking it back now. So I left that relationship and started over on my own. Again, just a blind faith and trust in the universe. And I literally just jumped and landed on my feet, and I've been supported ever since. And so I found the medical medium again. And it was funny looking back on my Instagram afterwards, I saw that I put out a call to the universe. I said, please just show me how to heal, please. And then 2 weeks later, medical medium showed up again. So I started. And it was just, I gave up everything. The standard American diet, all of the junk food that I loved, all of it. I was like addicted to Diet Pepsi, which is the worst thing in the world for you. Then I just gave it all up in one day and started on that path of detoxing my body, because the root of a lot of these chronic illnesses like Lyme and lupus, even endometriosis, he says, is the Epstein-Barr virus and toxins in the body that not only do we pick up from the environment, you know, the air, the water, the food, but we inherit from our parents as well. We're born, like when you think of a baby, people think they're born with a clean slate, but they're not. They're bringing all the stuff from their parents. And as the firstborn, I got the majority of it. So that's why I was the sickest out of the bunch. So basically what it comes down to is just my body was toxic. And I had to start cleaning it up. So yeah, so I started, I pretty much just juicing and eating raw food, organic food, and a lot of like antiviral supplements and vitamin C and lysine, all of those kinds of things. And I hit a plateau after about 7-8 months of detoxing. And, you know, detoxing is a really strenuous process on the body because all of the toxins are trying to get out. So my face would break out. You saw my post with that really awful rash, and it would come down on my chest, and it was so painful, and I couldn't be in the sun for a minute. That was the other thing with lupus that really was traumatizing for me, because I worshiped the sun. I loved the sun. I loved the beach. I loved swimming. And after getting lupus, I couldn't be in the sun anymore at all. It would burn, like it would burn my face, like this intense, like deep, itchy burn. It was awful. So having to avoid your source of life, you know, it's not fun, and it's sad. So yeah, the detox process was rough, but I just was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I feel like people need to get there sometimes before they make the big changes. And of course, I'm hard-headed. Like, I always need to get there. I always push myself till I can't go anymore. And I'm just like, okay, I have to do this. So I did it. And then the weirdest thing happened. So it was about 7 months into that journey. And I had given up cheese, so I was trying new things, and I made this cashew cheese, and I had eaten it before and I was fine. But this one day, I had this really weird allergic reaction to cashews, and I went into anaphylactic shock here, like by myself with my dogs, and I'm thinking in my mind, oh my God, I can't call the ambulance because my dogs will freak out. So I called my friend who lived down the street, and she came over and drove me to the hospital. And literally, I remember walking in there. I ran in as fast as I could, but on the way, I felt myself leaving my body. Like I was just trying to stay until we got there. But I was probably a minute from leaving. It was that close. We had gotten there just in time, and they took me in the back and gave me a shot of epinephrine, and I threw up everything I ate, like all over the room. And then I was like immediately okay again. And I had never had any allergies like that in my life. So as it was happening, I knew something was happening. And what I realized later was this was like a convergence of timelines and a potential exit point.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And while some people need that extra time to actually go over to the other side and make that decision, whether they're going to stay or go, I had already made up my mind that no, I'm going to heal from this and I'm going to stay here because I have a mission to complete. Even though it wasn't conscious as I'm like in the hospital going through this, but I just knew I had so much faith and trust in my body by that point that I could heal from this and I didn't have to suffer anymore, that I wanted to really give it a go and see if I could do it. And so after that experience, which was really like a near-death experience, the world opened up again. It was another awakening after that. All of these things were coming to me, just opening my eyes to more and more possibilities of what is and what could be. It was amazing. I was running into people all over the place who had NDEs, and they were talking about their experiences and all of this. People were reaching out to me out of nowhere and talking about Lemuria and these ancient lands and the connections we have and Pleiadians and starseeds and ETs. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And what a cool thing to stick around to find out, and see. So that was like another level of awakening. And then that spring, I had a session with Lori Ladd and the Pleiadians. And what they came through and said was, drop all the labels for your illness, which I had already done. I wasn't labeling myself anymore. I was just like, I'm toxic and we're going to heal, forget all the labels because we can over-identify with them and they become who we are.
Yep.
Which I had done previously. And I see people do it all the time. And so I had gotten rid of the labels and they said, it's just trauma in your body. It's just stored trauma in your body, and you just need to allow us to help you move it out. And the crazy thing about that was 3 days before that session, I started feeling energy move through my body for the first time ever, because I had been so dense with all of this stuff, all the toxins and just the dense energy that I was carrying all these years. And they said, yeah, it's just the trauma stored in your body. It's just the energy of the trauma. Because every time a trauma happens and we don't process it, it gets stored in the body. So there was a lot of that. It was like thick sludge. They said, just allow us to work with you every day. to help you clear that out. And I did. I started doing that. I did it for like 8 months straight, again, every single day, along with energy clearing meditations, and really trusting in that, and that my body wanted to heal. The body wants to heal. It really does. And we just have to support it and do the right things. And it really wants to heal. I also had an aura session with Aurora to remove some, because it was like every time felt like I would get somewhere, I would be pulled back. I kept getting pulled back. It was like 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And I felt like there was just something. So in that session, we removed a lot of attachments and cords and things like that that were pulling me back. And after those 2 sessions, and I had full belief that was going to work. Like I had full belief in that session that I was going to wake up from that and I was going to be healed and everything was going to be great, you know, but it didn't necessarily work like that. It was a gradual healing over the next, I would say, another 8 months of you just one day wake up and look back and you're like, oh wait, I'm not in pain anymore. I heard you talk about that too.
Yeah, I can't believe how similar so much of what you say is some of my own experience. Even with Dolores, you know, I was such a brat when we did our session, because I sat up and there were 2 things, you know. The first thing she asked is if I remembered everything. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I didn't really say it like that, but I mean, yeah, I remembered absolutely everything, and more than even what I was saying, but she was downplaying that. But the next thing and this I didn't say out loud in the classroom, because my body situation was much like what you described. And I don't want to take too long because we're about at the end of our time together today, but for me too, it took months, and 4 to 5 months, I think, for me. And then it finally just very gradually went away. And in subsequent sessions, I asked, well, why? And some of that has to do with belief systems. And some of it has to do with many of you, including you, are only going to really, really accept and believe this if it gradually goes away. Because look what we do sometimes when something wonderful happens or something great happens. We go, no way, no way. I mean, and we're making fun of that. But how weird is that? You know what I mean? You should be going, yes, thank you, all this. But sometimes the initial thing is disbelief, and that disbelief can push it all away. So you found your way back to health, and you found your way back to BQH, and quickly just tell us a little bit about your practice, because I know that you've already taken the leap and have expanded it in sort of the surrogate partner kind of way. And I want to give you at least a couple minutes of talking about that, and certainly wrap up your story if you hadn't done that already. But tell us about how all of that has brought you to the kind of practitioner and the kind of services you offer today.
Yeah. I feel like my life has really shaped me and molded me and prepared me for this work. Being able to understand human suffering on such a deep level, on so many levels, you know, and being able to relate to people and having that empathy and compassion for them, because I know I've been there, you know, like I've experienced a lot of suffering and loss in this life. So yeah, I feel like my life journey, and you know, the crazy thing is as I was questioning, what is my purpose here? What is my life's purpose? That's when BQH showed up, because I was asking, and it showed up, and you have the beautiful cardinal, which was that's how my grandmother shows up to me, as a cardinal, and now Dolores. So I was like, oh my God, wow, this is it. And as I was healing, I kind of put it on hold for a little bit. Like I had started the class, but I'm like, I was feeling like I needed to do more physical healing before I could really do the work. Because I didn't want my own energy to be interfering with it. I wanted it to be as pure as possible and clean as possible. I wanted to have my own body be prepared for the work. So I spent some time healing, and during that year, I would still be asking, even though I knew the answer. What is my purpose here? And I would just keep hearing BQH, BQH, BQH. It just wouldn't stop. So I'm like, okay, I get it. So I finally went back and I finished the class, and it really is. I've always been really, I've always loved the idea of hypnosis. I spent 4 years doing my own self-hypnosis at night as I was falling asleep to reprogram my subconscious mind. I've always loved that. I loved Dr. Brian Weiss and Dr. Michael Newton. I followed their works. But I didn't even know about Dolores Cannon until after I found BQH, which is kind of crazy.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that may be one of the first, well, at least on a show that anybody has said that, because typically it's of course the other way around. But yeah, it's still all wrapped up into her, because she inspires so many people, and of course was the absolute, and I make no secret of that, the inspiration for me to create BQH, just a much different approach than her classic one, but inspired by her nonetheless. And and you're taking it to some really interesting levels with a partner. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I work with my partner Karen, who's clear channel and medium, and so we've done a lot of fun things with surrogate sessions and tandem sessions, and even short, what we call bubble sessions, where she just goes in to answer 5 questions for a client's higher self. And it's really cool that we've been able to expand into these areas and kind of experiment with it and see where it could go. And it's really been amazing results. I especially love the tandem sessions because it's really helpful for people who have trouble connecting with their higher self to have someone there with you in that loving and safe and supportive space. And it kind of takes away, because I think a lot of people feel performance anxiety, like the pressure to perform, and then they just shut down. And when it's about them, also there's that block too, when it's about your own self, So yeah, I think that having that other person there provides a safe space and takes some of that pressure off. Even if, and I like them better than surrogate sessions, because really the idea of quantum healing is to empower ourselves, right? And so in a tandem session, even if the client doesn't have the visuals or the experience, the journey, she or he can at least be there to have the experience and be in that energy and soak all that energy up and follow along with Karen as she's unfolding the journey for them. And they can actually even ask their own questions, while they're laying there, which, we've had clients that didn't see anything at all. We've had clients that Karen really didn't need to do anything for. And then we've had kind of just a back and forth. So, I mean, it could go any way. It works for anyone. And I just love it so much. And I find that there's just something about the power of 3 people too that makes it more powerful. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I bet, I haven't done that. I mean, now we have several people kind of doing some similar things, and I've been involved in it. I don't set it up or offer it as a service right now, but I've certainly been involved in it and partaken in these kinds of things. But what I find really fascinating is that word that you used, empowerment, because if the person who's used to that, translating that kind of energy download information thing comes out, and then says it, and then the person maybe who isn't, or is unsure, or is has self-esteem issues, or all kinds of things, if it agrees with the little tiny things that are happening in their mind anyway, I bet there's a lot of aha moments, isn't there?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what I was feeling. That's what I was sensing. And then that really empowers them, doesn't it?
Yes. Exactly that. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's the lack of trust in their own self.
Yeah.
So when you have someone to validate that, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I was feeling. That makes sense. And it feels good.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's what quantum healing is about. It's really about empowering the self to know and trust that we really do have all the answers that we need if we would just trust it.
Yeah.
And I learned a big lesson in my first session because I wasn't fully trusting of myself, and I had expectations and I expected it to be different than it was. But I needed that again because I learned the hard way. Like I needed that.
Oh, it's a journey. It's a journey. Well,
Yeah.
gosh, this has been such a marvelous time getting to know you and having you tell our viewers about yourself. And I think, my own self looking back, I bet you think the same way. But, we go through all of that. So when you sit and listen to somebody and they talk about the kind of pain that they're in, it's not an abstract thing, because we've been there and we know what that is. And so it's all for a good reason. And you just glow with health and beauty, Tena. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please
Oh,
tell everyone how they can find you, how they can get a hold of you.
thank you, Candace. That means a lot to me. You can find me on the Quantum Healers directory at Tena Dodds Waters. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Quantum Healing with Tena, Tena.
I love
So,
it.
yeah.
I love it. Okay, so the very first Quantum Healing with Candace and Tena show today. My daughter was so tickled with that. She was putting Quantum Healing with Candace there. She went, "Well, look what popped up here." And I mean, it was just like a Google search or something. And I think actually you were above me. And I've been doing this for so long, but I quit kind of using that phrase for a while. But it's been marvelous to kind of resurrect that, to spend some time with you here today. Let's do it again, shall we?
Yes, let's do it again. This was really lovely. Thank you so much, Candace. I appreciate you and everything you've done for us and really the world because the modality of BQH is reaching people across the globe and it's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. And speaking of support, those of you out there can support us too, just by even visiting the quantumhealers.com directory and page. We've got lots to offer there. A nice blog, hundreds and hundreds of practitioners. I think somewhere near 1,000. I don't know. I can't keep up with the numbers. But so many of the healers that we have articles and other things. And we've got so much more coming in the future. We're working on it. We've been working on it for a couple of years. Some really, really fun things coming down the pike. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to be with both me and Tena, and we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.
Bye.